The United Nations System-Wide Action Plan on Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, known as UN SWAP, has continued to catalyze real change within UN entities' practices with respect to gender equality. This report is very rich, and it demonstrates the commitment and concrete actions taken by the UN entities to enhance integration of gender equality in evaluation systems and processes. Now, as 2017 marks the final year of the first phase of the UN SWAP, the findings of this report are important for taking stock of where we are and as informing efforts to strengthen gender equality in evaluation, and hopefully inspiring UNEG members to strive to exceed requirements during the second phase of the UN SWAP, which will commence in 2018. This webinar will be the first in a series of webinars that the working group will organize over the next several months to share good practices in integrating gender equality in evaluation. We hope that this presentation will stimulate discussion, and we look forward to hearing about your experience in integrating gender equality in evaluation so that we can all benefit from learning from each other. At this stage, I wish to welcome all of you and also congratulate Sabrina and colleagues for the leadership in moving a very substantive piece of work forward, which will be then presented at our AGM in Vienna and clearly indicates that the element of gender has been advanced through its evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran. So yes, again, my name is Sabrina Evangelista. Okay, so the UN SWAP constitutes the first accountability framework for gender mainstreaming in the UN system. The Economic and Social Council requested the UN system, including its agencies, funds, and programs, within the respective organizational mandates to continue working collaboratively to enhance and accelerate gender mainstreaming within the UN system, including by fully implementing the UN SWAP. UN Women, through UNEG, has been supporting the evaluation performance indicator since the launch of UN SWAP in 2012. And this is the third trend report produced. In 2016, 43 entities out of the 65 reporting entities reported that the UN SWAP evaluation performance indicator was applicable. UN Women reports the aggregate results, including those that did not follow the UNEG-endorsed reporting process to the UN General Assembly, ECOSOC. These ratings are not comparable because entities that do not follow the UNEG-endorsed process base their assessment on miscellaneous factors, whereas the UNEG-endorsed process in technical mode requires that the rating is based on the assessment of evaluation reports. Therefore, the findings that are presented, findings 2 through 4, are based specifically on those entities that follow the UNEG-endorsed process. However, even among scorecard users, or those users that follow the UNEG process, there are 3 different modes of reporting. Those that conduct an external review, which means they either hire an external consultant or firm to conduct the review. A peer learning exchange, which we have implemented for the second time this reporting cycle. And this entails the pairing of entities to review a sample of each other's reports, or internal review, which means that the entity itself has undertaken its own self-assessment. As we saw from the previous slide, the majority of reporting entities are following the UNEG-endorsed process for reporting. This slide shows the breakdown by rating, as a percentage of the rating. UNEG promotes the use of this technical note in accompanying scorecards in order to have a systematic unit of comparison, the evaluation report, and criteria against which to assess and score the scoring categories. And these correspond to these rating categories, which are reported on the overall indicator. The UNEG scorecard allows for a minimum level of coherence in reporting. Okay. The good news is that in 2016, more entities have sought an external perspective against the UN SWOP evaluation performance indicator. Over half of entities that use the UNEG scorecard sought an external perspective, which has shown to ensure a more systematic application of the UNEG guidance on human rights and gender equality in evaluation. In 2016, the UNEG working group also undertook an independent review of UN SWOP evaluation indicator reporting. The report is accessible online on the UNEG website, and I highly encourage everybody to review that report. One of the key findings, the review reviewed 46 evaluation reports completed in 2015 from 23 UNEG entities, and confirmed that externally and peer learning exchange reviewed reports were more systematic in applying the UNEG guidance on human rights and gender equality. So we do have some evidence that these external reviews are more robust in their assessment. So again, I do encourage you to access the report, and I'll be referring to it a bit later on as well. It's on the UN SWOP page. So although over half of scorecard users meet or exceed requirements, as can be seen on this slide, none of the 5 entities that scored exceed requirements hired an external reviewer, although 2 participated in the peer learning exchange, and 38% of entities that reported meet requirements based their rating on an internal review. In 2016, there were 449 evaluation reports scored against the API criteria across the UN system. The average score by UN SWOP criteria was calculated and disaggregated by the type of review. Overall, the reports are just barely satisfactorily integrating the 4 UN SWOP assessment criteria. As you can see, 2 indicate satisfactorily integrated. 3 would indicate a fully integration. And we can also see that gender responsive methods, as was reported also last year and corroborated by the independent review, is the weakest area. We do have another positive finding that the majority of entities reported either planned or completed actions to institutionalize gender equality in their evaluation system. So all the self-reported narrative comments submitted were reviewed in order to identify common actions taken to institutionalize gender equality in evaluation systems. Although this does not cover all entities and all actions, it does provide a useful overview. There were 5 unique types of progress that have been made: institutional evaluations of gender mainstreaming, changes to evaluation policies, updates to evaluation guidelines, training and capacity development, and updated quality assurance systems. So the ones that are in blue are those that have been completed in the past, and then the ones in purple are those that have been planned for next year. The overall numerical score reported on the scorecard between 2014 and 2016 were compared to identify trends. We didn't look past 2014 because the technical note was revised in that year. So the previous scorecard would not be comparable. So of the 31 reporting entities that used the UNEG scorecard during 2014 or 2015, 81% reported an increase in their overall score. So this is great news, but also we should recognize that over half of these are based on internal assessments. or less than half were based on external. Nevertheless, this is a positive trend. The report concludes that progress integrating gender equality in evaluation systems across the UN system is really commendable. There's been many actions taken, as you can see from the slide on the actions that have been reported. Policy changes are being made, guidelines are being introduced or updated. Many training and capacity development activities have taken place. So it's really a great progress. However, of course, we are evaluators, and there's always room for improvement in ensuring a common understanding about what it means to integrate gender equality in evaluation. So we know also from the independent review that was conducted that there is still a lack of understanding around what, or lack of common understanding around what it means to integrate gender equality in evaluation. So in order to move forward, we have some important developments and plans for 2017. The overall UN SWOP framework has been updated. It's called the UN SWOP 2.0. So this framework provides an opportunity for enhancing integration of gender equality, not only at an institutional level, but also in our evaluation work. And there are 4 new indicators that are introduced into this framework. They focus on results. So one is looking at whether the entity has achieved or is on track to achieve the high-level results as outlined in the strategic plan or its equivalent on gender equality and the empowerment of women, which should be aligned with the SDGs. So evaluation officers should be ready to provide support to their institutions for measuring progress of the entity with relation to gender equality and the empowerment of women. The framework will be implemented in 2018, and reporting on that will commence in 2019. Within the context of the revised SWOP framework, the evaluation indicator was also revised. UNEG endorsed this revision last year, and the key change is that the exceeds category has introduced a requirement to conduct an institutional evaluation of gender mainstreaming every 5 to 8 years in order to achieve requirements. And so we hope that this new requirement will inspire evaluation offices to begin to evaluate gender mainstreaming at an institutional level more thoroughly, and also because of the overall revision, it will also support the institution in being able to report on its progress in achieving results with gender equality. And in support of this, we have been already working on a guidance. I can go back, sorry. A guidance on evaluating gender mainstreaming. So this will provide very succinct guidance on ideas on how to evaluate gender mainstreaming from an institutional level. So we have many examples already, including that from UNDP and others. So this will be finalized hopefully in May, and will provide good support for all of evaluation UNEG members. Additionally, in 2017, the working group will undertake the revision of the technical notes for the UN SWOP reporting. So we hope that this will enhance the clarity on the criteria on how to meet or exceed requirements. We have heard both from all of you, from the UN SWOP focal points, and also from the independent review, that the current criteria lack clarity. And so we have many ideas already on how to enhance this clarity. And the revision of that process of the technical note will begin in June of this year. And so I encourage you, if you're interested, to take part in that, to let us know. let the working group members know. And finally, we're also, there are many good practices that have been identified. The independent review I mentioned again has identified these practices, and now we're currently producing a good practice guide, which will be issued hopefully by the end of April. And this will serve to provide UNEG members with concrete ideas on what other entities are doing to integrate gender equality in their evaluation work. So, and then we'll also, as mentioned by Indran, we'll have some webinars to share these practices and facilitate exchange. So now we have a presentation from Katya from Unesco, and she will be presenting the peer learning exchange. So she was a key member of our working group and was leading on the peer learning exchange process. So over to you, Katya.
Okay, thanks very much. Can you hear me? Because I changed microphones.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katya Sediakina-Rivière, and I work at Unesco's Evaluation Office. And along with Sabrina from UN Women, Sabas from OHCHR, and Elisa from UNEP, I co-facilitated this year's second edition of the Peer Learning Exchange. We had piloted this exchange last year, so we were hoping to use our experience as the first participating entities to help the new entities this year. This year we had 9 organizations participating: IOM, OHCHR, UN Habitat, UNHCR, ESCAP, UNIDO, UNCTAD, UNCDF, and UNRWA. So we more than doubled the number of participating entities, which was great. What we can see is that it was mainly smaller evaluation entities that participated. That is, those entities that produce less than 10 evaluations a year, with the exception of UNIDO and UN and IOM that produced more. And so those smaller entities, they did not hire external experts to assess their reports. Therefore, the peer learning exchange was an excellent opportunity to have somebody independent grade their reports, but at no extra cost besides staff time. So there were 2 main objectives, as I mentioned, to grade the reports without doing an internal assessment, but also to exchange some of the good practices and learn from each other on what we are currently doing and what we can do better to integrate gender equality and human rights. I would say that it's the second objective that was achieved even more so than the first one, but I'll go into that a little bit later. The way we proceeded was very simple. The aim was not to have a heavy process. As Sabrina mentioned, agencies were paired to the extent possible by size and mandate. And then we facilitated Skype calls between each pair, whereby we encouraged them to exchange evaluation reports. Then each agency proceeded to grade the other's evaluation reports, and then we had another Skype call where we exchanged feedback and also good practices on how we go about integrating gender equality and human rights. Next slide, please.
Hi, Katie, you can actually change the slide yourself.
I can.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, okay, great. Now, what we found was that the peer learning exchange, as I mentioned before, was an excellent opportunity for agencies that were not hiring external assessors to have independent assessments of their reports at no extra cost. It was also an opportunity to test internal assessments against those of others. So some agencies did this twice. They first graded their own, and then they sought an external assessment for a sample of reports. It really was an opportunity to exchange on good practices, on methodologies. And it was an opportunity to have a debate on the evaluation performance indicator itself and the scorecard criteria and on the various interpretations of it. And I will go into that later. And overall, this exercise increased everybody's awareness on the importance of integrating gender equality and human rights. What we found was that the peer learning exchange was very useful, but that it was not a substitute for an external review. Because agencies produced different numbers of evaluation reports, when they were paired together, it was agreed that they would grade similar numbers of reports. Therefore, the larger entities were still left with grading some of their own reports. So this, and however, as an external review found last year, as Sabrina mentioned, the peer learning exchange assessment was shown to be just as independent as an external assessment. Now, the other thing that we found was that the reporting itself is very subjective in nature, and it all depends on one's own interpretation of the scorecard criteria, and this varies greatly between all the individuals. This is partly due to a lack of guidance on the EPI scorecard criteria and partly just due to how we all see the criteria. Some of the agencies participating in the peer learning exchange also found that the focus just on the evaluation report was rather limiting, and that it was useful to fully grade an evaluation. It was important to look at its entire life cycle. That is from the terms of reference to the inception phase to the call for proposal and even to its dissemination. So some of the recommendations that emerged from the peer learning exchange were to provide more guidance on each criteria of the EPI, and I believe that this will be done with the revision of the technical note, and we can also exchange today on how this can be done. To develop practical tools such as a checklist for the EPI so that each agency can go through it and we can make sure that assessments are more unified. And some mentioned revising the criteria itself to reflect the evaluation process as a whole. Now, this is, again, a topic for discussion. A lot of good practices were mentioned during the peer learning exchange, and I will mention some of them. A number of agencies have established procedures for integrating gender equality and human rights into their entire into the evaluation process as a whole, so that goes beyond the development of the terms of reference. Other agencies have developed model terms of reference and processes of quality control that ensure that gender equality and human rights are mainstream throughout and are not simply included in a separate section in the terms of reference. Some include the UNEG guidance on human rights and gender equality as a reference document in all of their terms of reference. And another suggestion that came out was not only to emphasize the importance of presenting data that is disaggregated by gender and type of stakeholder in evaluation support, but to actually use this data in the analysis of gender equality and human rights issues in the evaluation report findings. I would like to conclude with some questions that I'd like to put on the table, maybe to get the discussion going. The first one, it relates to the peer learning exchange itself, how we can get more entities to engage in future sessions. Then, of course, there is the debate of the EPI itself, how we can collectively ensure a common understanding of criteria. How we can revise the technical note to ensure this common understanding and ensure a more unified process. Should gender-specific projects be assessed, should evaluations of gender-specific projects be assessed in the same way as non-gender-specific projects? People have different views on this. We know it's already very difficult to find evaluators with subject matter expertise. Now, should gender equality and human rights expertise also be mandatory? And should the UN SWOP EPI criteria also be mentioned in evaluation tour? So these are just some of the issues that came out of the peer learning exchange, and it would be interesting to hear everybody's views on these today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katja, for the very clear presentation, and congratulations to all the entities that participated in the peer learning exchange. We're really excited about that, and glad that it went well and smoothly. And hopefully next year we'll have even more. So Katja has proposed these questions, and we also now open the floor for questions on either presentation, and also to have a more in-depth discussion on these questions that Katja has raised. So please unmute your microphone if you'd like to speak. And we look forward to that. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Katja, for the excellent presentation and for the work that's been done in this stream. I think it's definitely taken the process forward in terms of an evaluation that the UNGP IEO did. We have referenced the UN SWOP, but in addition to this, as we are revising our country program evaluation, there's an explicit component on gender in all of the country program evaluation, which was not there before this. So this initiative has actually fed into that. And as you know, we're doing full coverage from 2018, and that means that in a cycle of 4, we cover about 50 countries. So we think it's an extremely important area. It's a headline, and I will ensure that the colleague from the office who is heading the section engages fully, so this aspect is integrated. The second element is an invitation. As you know, the National Evaluation Capacity Conference, the NEC, is run by the UNGP IEO. The next event is likely to be October, November this year. It is going to be in Europe. We're just working out which country. But from the content point of view, I will ensure that the leader of NEC, Heather Bryant, engages, because I think a topic of this seriousness needs to be on that international platform in the aspect. But we are very pleased with the work that is happening, and we proceed practically making this brought to the front. Thank you.
That's fantastic. So if you're having problems with your microphone, you can also type your question in chat. Do you have any questions?
Pascal from your ODC raised.
Pascal, would you like to speak?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the presentations. I had a question regarding your presentation, Sabrina, especially finding 5, the actions taken by entities. And I was just wondering if this was assessed in a systematic way, or if it was just based on what was reported on the site. And if it wasn't done systematically, I think this would be very interesting for the future, to also look into this in more detail, really, I don't know, maybe think about categories, or so that we exchange more about the actions that have been taken or that have worked as well.
Thank you, Pascal, for the question. Yeah, the technical note process basically encourages that entities report on remedial actions that are being taken. However, this is not really, it's not really a requirement, but most organizations really do report on that. So that's why I said that it's probably not comprehensive in that not all entities have reported. However, we did look, Danielle here, looked across all of the reported actions that were reported in the actual report uploaded online in the system. So we didn't look into any attachments but it was in the narrative format that is uploaded online. And so in that way, it was systematic in that it captured all of the actions that were reported on that system. In the future, we can, emphasize that these actions be reported more clearly so that we can better capture that. So although, as I mentioned, it's probably not comprehensive, I do think it captures majority of actions that have been taken and probably gives a good sense of the direction as well, in terms of, that the focus has really been on updating guidelines, which makes sense given that updating policies are not, that doesn't take place so often. And then trainings and capacity development efforts as well are taking place.
Great, thank you very much.
And we have a question from David from WFP, and he asks, how do we handle the decentralized evaluations? WFP's current evaluation policy includes centralized and decentralized functions. We see the risk of the newly decentralized evaluations may judge process we made in integrating gender in evaluations.
So David, at WFP, are those evaluations included in your review of the evaluation? So I think are you unmuted? You can speak. Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you, David.
Ah, okay. Thank you, Sabrina, for the presentation. And as you know, we have a new policy which was approved in 2015, and 2016 was a transition towards implementing the two functions. So we have been reporting on the centralized evaluations so far, and starting next year, in 2017, we'll report on both decentralized and centralized evaluations in terms of integration of gender. So as we have a new system now of the decentralized evaluations, we expect the risk of having either approaching or meeting requirements, while in centralized evaluations we have been maintaining meeting requirements, and we plan to exceed by end of 2018, in the next two years. So we have been wondering about if there is any advice, on the members on how to handle this, because I know UNDP and the UNICEF have these systems in place, and how they report on them, whether they report separately or if they report jointly for both centralized and decentralized. What has been the effect of the latter on the former state of evaluations? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. Yeah. So there are several entities that combine their scores. So also UN Women, we have a decentralized function. So what these entities do is, in their narrative report, they will disaggregate, and they'll say, the central function is actually achieving X, but the overall rating that's reported is the aggregate. So of course, we know that decentralized function requires more support, and so it will bring the overall score rating down. So that's just unfortunate, but hopefully also gives you a good challenge to look forward to. But yeah, what I would suggest then is to maintain in the narrative report that you can show both both ratings, so centralized versus decentralized. And I think you also have some new regional specialists, so hopefully that will support enhanced quality at the decentralized level as well.
Okay.
Felix has a question.
Okay. So Felix, would you like to?
You hear me? You hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. This is Felix from Unesco in Beirut. I just want to come back to the questions that Katja shared with us in relation, for example, on how to engage with more entities for the peer learning exchange. And I think I would suggest two things there. First, to communicate to the entities way ahead of time. I know at the end of the year, normally November, it's a really busy time, especially the coming year will be the end of biennium for the UN Secretariat. So I know managers in general feel more stressed if you ask an extra burden or some extra work at this time of the year. So I would encourage to really go ahead and inform the different offices in advance. And afterwards, I think it would be also very good to just prepare maybe a short note, really explaining what are the details of the peer learning exchange so that it can be shared with managers and other decision makers higher up in the management structure to really allow staff to engage easier with this. Because I have the impression that last year there was not enough clarity on how much work it would entail. So that's why there was some reluctance, at least at ESCO senior level, to really engage in this process. In regarding to the proposals for the revision of the EPI note, technical note, I think it would be very good, in addition to revise the criteria and give more guidance with them, also to provide practical examples on how, for example, a specific report or specific part of that report was rated. So I always think that the theoretical part should be combined with some practical examples so that people could really go back to a specific environment and would really help them to know if it's more like a meet the requirement or exceed the requirement, and to, in this way, try to reduce the subjectivity of assessing the reports.
Thank you very much, Felix, for these great comments. With regard to the PLE, this is a great idea that we should really start earlier in the year. And I think also that came out of the peer learning group as well. So we'll try to do that this year. The other point about a short note on what it is, I think that's a great idea as well. So right now we have a guideline on how to sort of conduct the PLE, but we could produce like a one-pager that could be shared with senior managers about the process.
Katja would like to say something.
Okay, yep, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I also agree that I was thinking of the one-pager idea. I think that would give the main messages to the managers, and then the staff doing the PLE can then look at the guidance. That I actually wanted to go back to David's question about centralized and decentralized evaluation. At UNESCO, we face this challenge every year in that we have many more decentralized evaluations whose quality was, in terms of integrating gender equality and human rights, was poorer than those of the centralized. And so until this year, we were always only approaching requirements because we were reporting the aggregate score. Then this year, it's the first time we reported that we were meeting requirements, and this is because the quality of the decentralized evaluations really improved. And we've now launched a training program across the organization for focal points, evaluation focal points. We're going to train 2 people in every office around the world and in every program sector on how to manage evaluations. And in this, we are including a module on gender equality and human rights, but we're also mainstreaming gender equality considerations in all the other modules. So we hope that this will contribute to improving the quality of the decentralized evaluations and hopefully ensure that this keeps up our score in future years. This is just starting out, so I can probably share more next year.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much, Katya.
Brooke, you have a question? You can speak now.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Thank you for the presentations. Katya, I wanted to pick up on the question that you put out in your slide on whether or not evaluations of gender-specific projects should be assessed in the same way as non-gender-specific projects. And this is one particular question we struggled with in doing our internal review. And as you know, data collection, data analysis is sometimes costly. I'm wondering, what the others' views are on this, in terms of whether or not the 2 types of projects should be reviewed or assessed similarly or differently.
I'm wondering, Sabrina, if you have data from all of the participating entities. You mentioned there were 400-something reports reviewed. Would you know how many were evaluating gender-specific projects versus those who were evaluating non-gender-specific projects?
So the independent review that we conducted last year looked a little bit at that. I don't have the statistic off the top of my head, but certainly where there's a gender-specific focus, it's going to be easier to take a gender-responsive approach. However, it doesn't equate to a gender-responsive approach. So from UN Women's perspective, we advocate that it should be applied across all different types of projects, probably even more particularly to non-gender specific projects, because all projects should have a human rights lens and look at how they're affecting women and men differently, and looking at the underlying barriers to participation, etc. So I do, this question comes up often, but I think, I think we need to sort of stop seeing it in a binary way, but rather, also within the SDGs, that it's really mainstreamed across everything. Gender is, it's critical to development, sustainable development. So so we're promoting that it would be looked at across all different types of programs, projects.
Could I add to that?
Yes.
I would say that for the gender-specific projects, it's probably, of course, there's much more data available in the evaluation reports that is disaggregated by gender. But I think that in the general assessment of each evaluation, if one looks at whether a stakeholder analysis was conducted at the beginning of the evaluation, and if all of the stakeholders were then disaggregated by different groups, including gender, then this kind of data can already be, one can already go after this kind of data in the data collection process, and then this can be further included in the evaluation report. Of course, if the project did not make any attempt to collect data, this is more challenging, but at the evaluation stage, I think this can already be addressed to some extent.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I mean, the other point is that, even as I mentioned, a gender-specific project may not be gender-responsive, as in, the it may be targeting women, but it may not be addressing the underlying issues to participation, or and maybe not looking across the norms that are there. So it may just be a bean counting type of exercise of, okay, we have women in the program, and that's a gender specific type of project. But it's so that's why I said, it's kind of at this point we shouldn't really be looking at that, but rather looking across how all of our programs are integrating gender equality, human rights perspective. So there are, of course, some areas, like I had a recent conversation with Judita from the Civil Aviation organization, so where, it is perhaps a bit trickier on some technical areas to look at that. However, I think for the majority of our programs, it's possible.
Yes, we have one more question from Anna.
Yeah, I also have the same impression about gender specific and non-gender specific projects. I mean, we have had similar experience here also. Some of those evaluations are, very, I mean, at the corporate level, like the financing dialogue, evaluation of the financing dialogue of WHO, which is very specific, and there is no indicators set for it to look at anything on gender. It was about money and things like that. So at a larger level. So we had faced this issue before, and another issue related to that is that some of the evaluations we do at the corporate level, those are the terms of reference are completely fixed at the governing body level, in the sense that we are requested to evaluate 5 or 6 major aspects of a particular global strategy, and then we have to make kind of adjust gender aspects into it, at least in some part of it, to be integrated into the the final terms of reference when we develop it. So this, at times we look at it and then see that we have not been fully integrating gender into those kinds of evaluations. So just another example, I just thought to bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Elisa.
Yes,
do you mind also telling your agency? Yeah, Elisa.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. I just want to share the UN Environment experience because we've been part of this for a couple of years, and on this point I think we have faced the similar issues, because basically I would say most of our projects are not gender-specific projects. However, I think it's also important that we distinguish between gender-focused or gender-specific projects and gender-neutral. So at the end of the day, when we carefully started looking at the gender dimension of most of our projects, we also found that they're not gender-neutral. So there are aspects that need to be taken into account, and often at the initial stage, the value that we could bring in as an evaluation was to start pointing those out to colleagues who had not included it in project design, so that hopefully with time we're also helping to build capacity inside the organization in terms of what aspects need to be looked at, how the design phase should take those into account, how the monitoring should start collecting the data, so that when we come in at the evaluation phase, we have something meaningful to build upon.
Fumika.
Thank you, Elisa, for sharing that.
Fumika, can you hear us? If not, I think Seda also wants to share something.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, and thank you so much for all the presentations. Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, Katya. And thanks so much for the UNEG to host this, UNEG Secretariat to host this interesting webinar. I think you are raising very important issues, and especially the questions in the last presentations are quite valid and important. I would suggest maybe, well, because we can discuss whether or not the evaluations should be assessed in the same manner for gender-specific or non-gender specific projects, but I believe we can probably post it on a wider network, I don't know, Gender Eval or similar networks, and get more feedback from practitioners. We will be also part of it as well and provide additional information. Same applies to the question on the expertise for evaluators. It might be very difficult to have all the expertise necessary, including the gender, for different types of evaluations and different purposes and objectives that they serve. But it's a very important question again. I mean, wider network of practitioners would provide a better feedback on that. In the specific environment of FAO projects and programs, we also face a lot of difficulties in trying to integrate gender considerations in evaluations, and hence you see the level or rating of these evaluations is a bit below our expectations and your expectations as well. We are working on it, but these important questions, I think, need to be properly documented, and if you put it on a global network, we would have a better feedback, which can be then used by all necessary, by all the organizations and by all the evaluators to refer to. This is just my small contribution to this. But thank you very much. This is very important. We also work on the framework for integrating gender considerations in evaluations, and will definitely benefit from the new guidelines that you will be developing. Thank you.
Thank you, Cesar, for this. Yeah, I think this is has always been sort of insular to UNEG, given the context of UN SWAP. But yeah, I think it's also relevant to engaging some of these questions, engaging with a broader network, eval gender or whatnot.
All right. Okay, I see.
So I think Fumika is trying to connect.
Yeah. Fumika?
Yeah. Hello? Okay. Hello? Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry about that. Hi, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Chinka from UNDP. I missed the first probably half of the presentation, but then I'm looking forward to receiving the PowerPoint presentation, which was really interesting. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share our experience here at the UNDP IEO. I believe Ian just mentioned it a little bit, but last year we had all of our evaluations assessed against UN SWAP by 2 external consultants to see how we are doing in terms of our efforts in trying to integrate gender into our evaluations. And results were really interesting. And some evaluations did really well, and then others didn't do so well. And as we were looking at why the variability happened, it had a lot to do with having a gender expert as part of the team members. If you have extra gender expert as part of the evaluation team, of course this person will rigorously look at all of our aspects, and the final scores against SWAP were really, really high. But then, of course, there's an implication to this approach as well. In some cases, gender program is not the core programs that we're evaluating, so we may not necessarily have an additional gender expert as part of our team. So the challenge to us would be how really, of course, having a gender expert as part of the team would be ideal, but if not,
if that's not the case, then how all of us, evaluators, those who lead and manage evaluations, can really train ourselves to be able to use these criteria and have the same standards in interpreting the results and using these great tools into our evaluation. That's really a challenge that we're feeling right now. And another point I just wanted to make, I'm sure this is probably a different point, and is that so the UN SWOP has been mentioned in our terms of reference, at least for the country program evaluations that we have. We're trying to mention or refer to this as part of our data collection and analysis instrument. But then, after all, we're also thinking about whether or not this gender as one criterion should be a core standalone evaluation criterion. As you know, that criteria, whether or not those are valid criteria, there has been a lot of discussion on this, and perhaps gender might be an additional or a very important one single criterion that we may have to incorporate. So I just wanted to share that view. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Fumika, for this, for sharing your experience with the this assessment development results of country program evaluation. Just on your last point, I wanted to share that again, the independent review that we conducted last fall, which I encourage you to read, it actually suggests that those evaluations where where gender was a standalone criteria were actually not as strong as those where it was integrated across the other criteria. So it recommends having both. So it recommends having that, criteria, but also mainstreaming it in the others. And that's because what often happened is that the evaluation report would perhaps dedicate one paragraph to gender instead of really analyzing it fully throughout the analysis. So that was what this independent review has suggested. So that's one input to that. But I would, again, the report is on the UNEG website under the UN SWOP page, and we will be reorganizing that page because it's a bit getting a bit messy. But it's the last link on there, and it also goes through all of the different criteria and actually speaks to a lot of the questions that have been raised, about the clarity in criteria. And it goes through each of those criteria and clarifies what could constitute, meeting requirements under that, what it really means to integrate gender in each of those criteria. So this will really form the basis for the revision of the technical note. But I encourage everybody to look at that report now, since the technical note will not be revised for some time. And also the UN SWOP report that we presented today has some of those issues raised, the challenges that were faced by UNEG members. So there is a lot of information there. I encourage you to look at, and we will be, because I know people don't have a lot of time for reading lots of reports, we will be trying to disseminate this in different formats so that it is more digestible and disseminated. We'll come to a close now. There's one more, intervention. So we'll have one last intervention from Pabas.
Hello, thank you very much. Just to say thank you to all the colleagues involved in the preparation of the webinar, particularly to Sabrina and Katia. And thank you for all the inputs received from the colleagues on these issues identified by Katia in the presentation. This will be very important to plan the rest of the year in the working group, including the preparation of some webinars where we can address these issues identified related to gender and human rights issues. So thank you to everyone, and you are invited to continue sending your inputs by email on these and other issues that you consider that could be addressed by this working group. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sabas. Okay, thank you, and John, and thank you to everybody for coming. And this was recorded, so we will send the link out and the PowerPoint. And look out for more webinars to come. And also, if you're attending the UNEG EPE, we will have a working group session where we will be presenting, Mesai will be presenting with Sabas on the good practices integrating gender equality and evaluation. And then, of course, on the work of the working group, including this at the HM. So looking forward to everybody's engagement. Thank you.
Thank you.